Olivia Brown, your host of wjlive. Tonight we are at Kari Lake's election night party. Was the Trump endorsement a reason that you decided to vote for Kari?
I feel like Trump just endorses the most credible people, and I feel like it really just proved that Kari was the one to vote for, that Trump endorsed her.
No, it's still the issues that she's for.
Very much so. Actually, it's a huge thing, I think, across the nation.
To me, endorsement or not, it's Kari for us. I mean, she's got the values we like.
Kari is the Trump-endorsed candidate, and Trump was very about protecting our border.
The right attitude, the right mindset. She's in it for her children, for family, for the state.
100%. I mean, it's the Trump effect. You're either a Trumplican, which is a Trump Republican, or you're a rhino. That's how people look at it. So I think Trump endorsing Kari Lake really gave her more of a voice.
What would you do if Karen Taylor Robson were to win tonight?
Well, unfortunate as that would be, I'd probably go home and shed a few tears, but I'd be right back at it tomorrow because we have to stop Katie Hobbs. That's the key to keeping Arizona red, is stopping Katie Hobbs.
I would move out of Arizona. No. I would pray for her. I would pray for her in the seat and that she would do God's will while she's elected. I would rally behind the people that are elected that are, doing what's right in Arizona and just do what we can as patriots and Americans.
I'd get even more involved with politics so I can make sure that we keep her on her tippy toes.
Why did you choose Kari Lake?
So I grew up watching Kari Lake on Fox 10. She really called out the news media for what they are. She's pro-life. She knows we have fraud in our elections. She's going to do something about it as governor.
Having somebody with a Christian worldview in government is extremely important.
Well, I think Kari Lake is an awesome woman. She stands for everything that the America First policies stand for, and that's all that I really truly care about. Very conservative, all the values. Pro-America First, pro-life, border security, really big. And then also public schools, getting CRT out, and the no mask mandate.
I like that she has integrity. I like the way she left the news station because of her integrity. I left my nursing job a year ago because of the mandates. I like the fact that she trusted her heart more than her career.
She's anti-establishment.
It's crazy what's happening with the public schools as well because, they want to try to import critical race theory. We just support Kari Lake and we support what she's doing.
She's pro-Second Amendment and she's pro-life. She's a very strong interfaith and she seems like a really good leader.
I love that she is pro-2A, pro-life, and I love her border policies, her plans around education as well.
Day of election voters, they're Trump voters. They brought their ballots in person because they didn't trust the system.
And when we get into office, we are going to reform our elections for once and for all.
What a wild night it was. It was so much fun to be there and get to talk to so many wonderful people and get their thoughts on supporting Kari Lake, what would happen if Karen Taylor Robson were to win. It was incredibly close. I have a good friend and an amazing woman, Lori Klein Corbin. She is the Arizona Republican National Committee woman, and we're here to get her thoughts today because I know you live and breathe politics. This is what you do for Arizona. What were your thoughts on last night's election results?
Well, I was surprised that there was such a lead there, and but I understand that Kari and a lot of the people in our party told people to go on election day and vote a new ballot or bring your ballot in. So it looks like we've got about 200,000 right now that have not been counted, and they will have to be verified with signatures. So we should hope to have that done by tomorrow, Friday at the latest.
Let's show these election results that we have for the primary. These numbers are very interesting to see. I remember earlier in the night looking and seeing that Karen Taylor Robson was at 49% and Kari was so much below. This is how it is right now. Like you said, more votes are going to be coming in. So right now we are 46.2 to 44.4. And you can kind of see here the colors. Taylor Robeson was predominantly in Phoenix, and Kari Lake won all in the surrounding rural areas. And that's what you see with more America First candidates like Kari Lake.
That's right. The conservative outer areas from Maricopa tend to be much more rural conservative voters and more of the Trump voters. So right now, it's 2/3 of the votes being counted are swayed by Kari Lake, and they're Kari Lake voters. So it looks like she's got it wrapped up, and they should be announcing it probably by tomorrow.
Yeah, that's very exciting. It's interesting to see with the way that ballots are counted now that all the early voters really went to Karen Taylor Robeson, and they're coming in so much more slowly because Kari Lake really advised her supporters to vote on Election Day instead of going early.
That's right. That's right.
It was interesting to see that she was saying Election Day for a really long time. And then about 2 weeks ago, when early voting started, they're like, oh, wait, go early voting too, because they wanted more people to get out there and have more of a vote. It was really interesting to see how that played out there. We had really kind of a mess of all the ballots that were going on last night, specifically in Pinal County. It was crazy. They had ballot shortages. They had all these ones that were incorrect.
63,000 incorrect ballots that went out in Pinal County. And, you know, this is unfortunately Katie Hobbs. I mean, she oversees our elections. And when you have that kind of failure, not having ballots for voters, turning them away at the polls, we can't have that. That's total incompetence.
Especially since Pinal is a more rural area that is more predominantly Republican.
It is definitely more conservative. Yep.
Yeah. We have Sheriff Lamb out there who is, very well known across the country for being conservative.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know he's actually from Pinal County. So it's so cool to see how things, played out with all the numbers. It's been so much fun watching the numbers. But you're right, Katie Hobbs, we really need to be focusing on the Democrats now. Once we get those final numbers in from Kari Lake and Karen Taylor Robeson, that should be our predominant goal.
Oh, absolutely. We have to pivot and realize that we are all together here to win our country back. So we have been taken over by unelected bureaucrats that are using regulations and government power to destroy our middle class, our small businesses, and our way of life. I mean, we really have to make a clear choice, and we as Republicans need to work together. We have to stop picking at each other, because use the Reagan rule. 80% we agree. We're all part of the same family. This is our country, and the independents and non-party we're all in this together. We got to live in this country. We don't want to live in Venezuela, right?
Yeah, exactly. How, with your role, how does that play out in uniting the Republican Party? As the Republican National Committee woman, what is your role?
Well, my role is to remain neutral in a primary. And you do that because you're here as party leaders to support every candidate in a primary, and may the best person win. And obviously, it's very damaging when you don't do that, if you play favorites. We're not here to play favorites as the leaders of our party. I sit on the board of the RNC. So we have to work together and uplift everybody and win the hearts and minds of our party, which is a bit fractured at the moment, and win in the general. Because the Democrats love it when we fight with each other.
Yep.
And they cause that. They push it. They push that agenda. It's like, getting in the ring with pigs. You get dirty and the pig likes it.
Yeah. And we saw the votes with Katie Hobbs. We saw that she had about 72% of votes from the Democrats. And Lopez only had about 22%. So Democrats are very good at banding together, deciding I'm going to go for one candidate. And unfortunately, the Republicans are not always the best at that. You see, this race in the governors is so incredibly close. Here we have what it looks like in the Democratic primary. It's interesting. So Katie Hobbs shows she overall won, and Lopez just had the bottom a little bit. And so that's more in the Pima. And so this is what it looked like for the Democrats. And it's interesting compared to what ours was. There was a bigger amount for Karen Taylor Robeson than there was compared to looking at this here.
Right. Well, that's because the Democrats always unite around one candidate, and we tend to have 5 or 6, and we beat each other up so badly that when it comes to the general, it's hard to heal hard feelings and unite. But we've got to do that because the country's at stake. We can't continue with these policies that the Biden administration and a Democrat would do to our state. I mean, we do not want to become California.
Exactly. Speaking of a lot of candidates, we had a lot of candidates in the Senate race, but we did have one person come on top. That was Blake Masters. He was endorsed by President Trump. We can see this here. He really won almost all of the state. Jim Layman came in second. And the race was actually called a lot earlier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a thinner margin, but it was a bit bigger. And do you think that has to do with the coattails effect and President Trump endorsing Blake Masters?
Oh, absolutely. I think that Trump's endorsement has helped every one of the candidates because he wants a team. We want an American first team to be able to shake things up and make sure that we lead our state. I mean, look at Florida. DeSantis is, converting Democrats who come to his state because they get a little taste of freedom and they like it.
Yeah.
Well, and this is what we want to keep here. This is a free state of Arizona. We want to keep it so. And I have to say that the Republican leadership under Doug Ducey has done a lot of great things for the economic school choice. We have a seminal voucher program that should be emanated around the country. So we've got a good foundation for Kari Lake to come upon and take it further. So we enhance our business community freedoms, deregulation, lower taxes, and go forward. So we're in a good position.
That's good. Speaking of other Trump endorsements, someone just kind of came out of the blue after he got endorsed by President Trump. That is Abe Hamadaw. There was a lot of people in this race. Yeah. Only the top 4 are here, but I believe there was about 6 people in the race. At the very end, nobody dropped out, which was very interesting to see. That doesn't usually happen. Abe won most of it. I think personally it had to do with President Trump endorsing him because originally almost everybody had similar polled numbers. And then all of a sudden, after Abe got endorsed by President Trump, all of a sudden, a lot of people really jumped on board with him.
That's true. He is a very articulate candidate. He comes across very strong, very sophisticated, and I think that it'll be a dream team with him, Kari Lake, and Finchem. If we can clean up the Secretary of State's office, which Katie Hobbs has left in a mess, and we don't want to see her do that to our state. So if we're in a good position with that team. They're a strong team.
Yeah, we actually got to talk to Mark Finchem last night, have an interview with him, and he talked about what he would do differently with the 2020 election if he is going to run our elections in 2024. Let's show our interview from last night.
It's a bit overwhelming right now, and we've got a war room that's going through all the data that's coming in. We want to make sure that this is a secure and fair election. If I didn't legitimately win, I don't want the position. That's my position. I want to make sure that every single candidate has a fair shot when they run for office. It's that simple.
What would you do different than what happened in the 2020 election if you are elected?
The list is too long to go into tonight, but I think there's a couple of things that we've got to get done. One is we got to clean the voter rolls. We've got to get off of the Electronic Registration Information Center. That's Eric. This thing it's a bucket of fraud. Okay, I think. So Carrie just joined I think, about 4 points up. So she's now 44-45. I mean, there's a lot of things. Right now, we're creating a punch list of all the things that have gone wrong in 2020 and this year. Carrie Lake's now up by 2. Wow. So that actually gets into something that we're seeing that is the effect right now. Day of election voters, they're Trump voters. They brought their ballots in person because they didn't trust the system. My objective is to see to it that people can trust the system again. I think we're probably going to have to take a serious look. I'm going to ask the legislature to go back to absentee ballots, and let's move away from mail-in ballots that are just indiscriminate. I mean, we've got people all over the state that are saying, I've gotten ballots that I didn't ask for. I've gotten ballots that have my name but altered on my name at my house. This is a battleground of fraud, and that's what we've got to put an end to.
Yes, he is right. Mm-hmm. Mail-in ballots can be very ripe with fraud, but in Arizona, about 80% of our voters do mail in. That is right. Very large for other states. Really, only besides California, we are the next below them in terms of mail-in voting. So what do you have to say to that? Maybe these people would not vote in person if they didn't get their mail-in ballot.
Well, I think that's why, because Arizona is a destination state for the elderly, retired. You've got the 65 plus. And they do enjoy voting by mail. They don't have to wait and so on. So I think we might want to look at that a little closely. I think Mark will do a good job of cleaning up. I mean, my neighbor, young guy, former Air Force, he didn't get his ballot. He asked for one, didn't get one. So he went in and voted in person. So what happened there? So, and then also they're not supposed to be sending out to ballots that people didn't ask for. And my nail guy told me in the last election that he and his wife got a ballot they didn't ask for. So, what is that about? And then also they were registered Democrats, so they got a phone call asking why they voted for Trump and if they made a mistake. Can you believe it?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Well,
on the flip side, though, I had a friend and they previously would get mail-in ballots. Every year they have done that. They got off of the permanent early voting list called the PEVL in Arizona. And so they did not receive a mail-in ballot this time. And I gave them a call, and what they had to say was, I've been too busy. I haven't had a chance. They ended up getting to the polls after lots of convincing, with only 20 minutes to spare. Wow. At 6:40. Ooh. If I hadn't give them a call, then they wouldn't have voted. And there's a lot of people like that who probably didn't vote. And I worked for the Republican Party previously, and I always remember on election night, I was working up in Yavapai County, and that was the primary for Paul Gosar. And there was someone, I was knocking their door. It was around like 30 minutes to polls close. But we keep doing voter contact until the sunset. And I talked to this lady at her door, and she's like, well, I would have voted for Paul Gosar, but my mother wasn't feeling that well today. So I didn't have a chance to get in. I was like, well, you can go right now. She's like, no, I can't leave my mother. And unfortunately, I'm sure there's many, many other people. She said she was going to vote Republican, and she didn't.
Yeah, I think that if we secure our mail-in ballot system, it's fine. And there's ways of doing that. There's ways of numbering a ballot to the person voting. There are ways of counting these ballots so that people cannot fraudulently print them. And then the other thing is we do need to get rid of the voting center, not the voting centers, but the voting drop boxes. Because that's where the cheating is. The centers, you come in and they look at your ID and you can vote even early, which I did last Friday. And it's a little arduous, but it works. And then you are an identified voter and your vote counts right away. So
that's what I did as well.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see, this was my first time voting in person. And what happened there, she checked my ID 3 times.
Yeah.
And so I was actually very pleased to see how that was in Arizona, because I have heard so many things about how it does go wrong. And I'm sure it does. But like you said, the drop boxes are the ones that are really ripe with fraud. That's what we saw with 2,000 Mules, the movie by Dinesh D'Souza.
Right.
He covered Arizona specifically. And I know actually there's is it Yuma County is where they are prosecuting someone that was a part of that movie.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So there is a lot of progress going towards that. And also in Arizona, we have a new rule that is people can vote on in the general election, which has to do is Arizona voter ID. And so with that, you have to have a voter ID number, like you talked about, and you have to be able to give some sort of identification, whether it is your social security number or your driver's license on the ballot. And so that's a way that we can secure these mail-in ballots and make it a lot more successful. And I think that's really what we need to do in Arizona. And if we do that, I think that we could be an example for other states.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another candidate that we saw that was endorsed by Trump actually had success, and the person that had been in there before, after a lot of controversy, he booted out after many, many years. Let's show this photo. This is David Farnsworth here with Trump. And he was up against Rusty Bowers, who has been in for quite a while.
Right.
But recently made headlines after his testimony about January 6th. And then the Republican Party censured him. What do you have to say about him getting censured?
Well, I think we need party discipline. He deserved to be censored based on what he said at the committee, which was ridiculous. And I have no problem with that. He's also the Speaker of the House, which is a very powerful position here in Arizona. So, you know, he should be more responsible. And the way he testimony, I mean, unfortunately, it gave chills, I'm sure, to Liz Cheney, but it certainly did not reflect the reality.
No, it didn't. And it really caused more division in the Republican Party, which we've already been seeing. And we just really need to come together.
Well, we've got a lot of things to clean up. Rusty Bowers is a lobbyist. What the heck? It's like the fox in the hen house, right? When you're a lobbyist, you should not be holding public office. When you come out, even in Washington, you have to spend 2 years as a regular citizen before you can lobby again. So this type of stuff that goes on here needs to be cleaned up.
I definitely agree. And another Trump-endorsed candidate that we got to talk to last night was Janae Shamp, and she was running for the state Senate for LD29. It was interesting that President Trump actually got involved with smaller races than just the Senate and the Attorney General and the really big statewide races. So this is what Janae Shamp had to say about her endorsement from President Trump and how it reflected on her race.
Hard work has really paid off. I knocked on a lot of doors, I made a lot of phone calls, had talked to a lot of voters, a lot of constituents. I'm an operating room nurse, but I'm a citizen that's getting in the fight to save our country, and I believe that starts right here in Arizona. And we're going to start out on the west side.
So you are endorsed by President Trump. How does it feel to be endorsed by a former president? And do you think that it's impacted your race?
I do. I believe with the polling I was already winning, but it definitely did help, and it is quite an honor. It's an honor to be nominated, to be endorsed, by a man that has fought so hard for our country. And that's one of the reasons why I got in this fight between the response to COVID and then what happened with our elections in 2020. I've been a Trump supporter since the golden escalator, so.
What is the biggest issue that you have been sharing with voters that you care about and that you are going to champion for your voters?
Being a voice of we the people. We've lost our voice. That's why I'm running. When I knocked on a door, I picked up the phone and I called a constituent. I asked, please allow me to interview for the job to represent you, because that's what this is about. You don't put the pin on your lapel and then you're something else. You are a representative of the people, because that's how our government was set up. And I believe we have to get back to that, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to protect our freedom.
So listening to that, it's really shown how the coattail effect really has made an impact in Arizona. We've seen it in some other races as well.
Right. And
we spoke to Tudor Dixon on Monday, and she was a gubernatorial candidate for Michigan, and she had a chance to sit down with me and our other wjlive host, and this is what she had to say about what faith had to do with her candidacy.
It's kind of neat to see those sort of biblical moments that you've only read about and go, wow, I've actually seen hearts open and minds open and this movement come together to bring back these values and make sure the state thrives and to focus on family in a unique way. It's been very exciting.
I like that. She was a very cool guest to get on the show.
Oh, yeah.
And we really enjoyed having her on. We actually, while we were playing that video, we got news that Kari Lake is doing a presser right now about ballot fraud and everything that has been going on.
What she did yesterday, she ran a horrible election yesterday. She embarrassed the state of Arizona, and she wants to take that incompetence that she's shown as Secretary of State and now moving to the governor's office. The people won't have it. We've got to get our elections reformed so that every Arizonan, whether they be Democrat, Independent, or Republican, when they go to bed on election night, they know the winner and they're satisfied that it was a fair election. We don't have that right now, and that's why this was an issue that I ran on. And I intend to work with our lawmakers. The legislature, they're the ones who write the laws for elections. And we're going to shore up our election laws so that every Arizonan knows that every legal vote counts. And we're going to make it easy to vote and impossible to cheat. Because we know what the outcome of this is. We the people won. We won. And frankly, I'm going to be having dinner with my husband tonight, and I don't want anybody to call me and ask me for a comment. So we're doing this a little bit early because I actually want to take one night off. I haven't had a night off for a long time.
That's good. We need to address the issue and get down to the bottom of it. And I think Finchem, as Secretary of State, will certainly do that. I don't trust the Democrats. I mean, under Adrian Fontes, we had so much squirrely things going on. He disobeyed the county supervisors. He went rogue. He was never punished. And that's the other thing, is that we have to have teeth. So when people violate our own laws, they have to be held accountable legally. And right now, we have very weak laws. And they get a slap on the wrist, and we can't do that because otherwise we disenfranchise voters. They want to know their vote counts and that it's legitimate and they're not being played. And so we have to be straight.
It's scary to me to see that Adrian Fontes won his race against Reginald Bowling. I was hoping people would vote for Reginald Bowling because he didn't have as much of a chance to win, because Adrian Fontes has already been in before, and he's been painted as someone very likable, even though all these crazy things happened under his watch in the 2020 election.
Oh, in 2018, it was worse.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Oh, yeah. That's when he started those voting centers and boxes whereby you didn't have to show ID. You could, no. It was totally a violation of the county supervisor's direction. They oversee him, and they should have fired him. But they didn't. And now he's running for Secretary of State. But he's partisan, and you cannot afford to be partisan in that role. You've got to make sure we secure our elections for everybody.
Exactly. And fingers crossed that Mark Finchem goes over the finish line against Adrian Fontes, because Secretary of State is such an important role.
It is.
Overseeing our elections and really being able to show the path that Arizona is going to go on. It is a battleground state, and it impacts the entire nation with its votes. We saw that in 2020, and we're going to see that again in 2024. Arizona's vote is incredibly, incredibly important because it is very divided in Democrat and Republican. It used to be typically Republican. It's moved more and more towards the left. I believe it has to do a lot with Californians moving in. A lot of people say, "Don't California my Arizona." You'll see that on bumper stickers all the time. Speaking of another state that had something, a very important amendment was Kansas. And Kansas had amendment about should it be constitutional to remove protections of abortion rights. And I saw this trending on Twitter. Everybody was saying, vote no, Kansas, vote no, Kansas. And this is what it turned out. We had 58% vote no and only 41% vote yes. You can see this is the colors of the amount of where the state voted. This is really pushing us backwards from what Roe versus Wade just accomplished.
Right. Although the states will have to decide to what level. I mean, 85% of the population believes that there should be very limits on abortion. They're not, whereas the Democrats believe you can have an abortion after the baby's born 28 days, which is crazy. That's murder. I mean, it's murder anyway, but this is ridiculous. But most people understand it is wrong to murder a child.
I 100% agree. But you did bring an excellent point. Roe versus Wade really brought back power to the states.
That's right.
Instead of being all across the board for the country. So I guess Kansas, with this, they are using their state's power, and Kansas decided that they wanted to vote no. I think that it is unfortunate for life and everything that we've been seeing. There's been so many babies that have been saved after Roe versus Wade was overturned and states went back to the laws that they had previously to Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. We have this in Arizona as well. Mm-hmm. We have a 15 weeks ban. Mm-hmm. And I look at that, and it's 3.45 months. And that is a long time to carry a baby and then abort that baby. If it doesn't make sense to me that someone would carry that baby for so long. You have to know that you're pregnant at that point, because that's when you are starting to show. And making that decision so late, it makes me think, why are Democrats upset about this? Because it's really just when the baby, as they would say, is more viable. We believe that life begins at conception. But when they, start believing that it's viable, but they just want to push more, like you said, up to 28 days.
It's sick. It really is. But again, the states will make this decision. So it'll be more reflective of each state and their positions. But, I would imagine they're going to tighten that as they go forward so that it's rare. Abortion should be rare.
That's what Hillary Clinton used to say.
Yeah, right.
That definitely has changed. Like we said, the Democrats, they are not the same Democrats that they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And that's why we really have to focus on fighting back and come back together as a party. We really appreciate you tuning in with us today, seeing all the different interviews that we had from Kari Lake's election night. It'll be interesting to see what the final results will be. They still have not called it at this moment. Like, as Lori said, it should be tomorrow at the earliest that we will see these election results. But it's been an amazing experience to go there last night and interview them. And we're so thankful for having you, Lori, share your insight because you really know Arizona best.
Oh, thank you.
And see us again tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in with us today.